Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our journey, our discussions, our discoveries, and our explorations with respect to the recent releases made by the Criterion Collection during this year of 2023. That brings us to that title, which has been released by Criterion on a Blu-ray edition at spine number 1174. And this is a work which is described as being from the year 1979. And the name of the filmmaker is John Woo. And the name of the film, and please pardon me for my poor pronunciation of the language, I hope you can forgive me, but it is HURRAH, or as it's known in English, Last Hurrah for Chivalry. This is the work which is described as being from the year 1979, and it is part of the really wonderful Hong Kong cinema legacy and tradition. And part of that too is Golden Harvest, and this is from writer and director John Woo. And among its really splendid cast, we have people like Wai Pak and Feng Hak-on and Damien Lau and others. And Wai Pak and Damien Lau star their characters Chang and Qing Yi respectively, and their relationship. It's a very anchored and essential and complex one. It's filled with a lot of promise and drama and a sense of the wuxia spirit, and also the sense of surprise and twists and turns, providing for a lot of, I think, fundamental entertainment points indeed. So this is the work which is, again, please pardon me for my poor pronunciation of the language. I hope you can forgive me. But this is Ho Hap, or as it's known in English, Last Hurrah for Chivalry. And so I focused in on, or if we were to try to focus on the plot of this film, which is a really, I think, really exciting and very action-filled plot. It's action-filled and it's very twist-filled plot, so I'll try to be as very vague as possible here. But we do have this idea of type of maybe assassins for hire, or bodyguards for hire, or types of wrongs that people hope to get righted, or this idea of revenge plots and deceit plots and deceptions and double cross and triple cross and things not quite what they seem, and this idea of a world where perhaps loyalty and fidelity have decayed in favor of a type of maybe immoral or amoral world. Now, among this establishment of immorality or amorality, we have a number of characters that become very fundamental to this, and these are the Wai Pak character and the Damien Lau character respectively. And we see each of them emerge in the scenes through various forms of their own respective plot mechanics and story subplots that bring them to the fore in terms of being maybe their paths cross, they're being essentially hired in certain respects in order to perform certain missions for people who are hiring them, whose motives may or may not be what they seem. And so are they on the same side? Are they working together? Or will certain circumstances force them to become rivals? Now, this becomes, I think, part of the intrigue or mystery, if you will, or the way in which this film piles on twist upon twist upon twist upon twist. It seems like the characters in this world may or may not be what they seem. Or are they? And that becomes, I think, part of the appeal and charm and indeed the intrigue and enticement for continuing fascination with this work, Last Hurrah for Chivalry, because I think at the center of this, we have at least an examination of what one might call the loyalty in the context of characters in the vein of this wonderful tradition, wuxia tradition, and this wuxia tradition of cinema, bringing with it this level of swordplay, action, which is very much akin to action choreography. And believe me, there are a lot of fights in this film. There are a lot of fights that are really complex. They use different scenarios and environments. They engage with the environment. Sometimes the environment attacks and they have to adjust. And we see each thrust and parry and block and swing and attack, etc. Now, one of the great things about this film, Last Hurrah for Chivalry, is the way in which this film is able to mix a hyper-realized style in terms of the action and the melodrama and the sort of romance and the loyalty and the deception and deceit and betrayal on highly what one might call, what often is used in the discussion of John Woo films, a hyper-realized operatic sensibility. And this is, I think, a way for people to describe, I think very reasonably and rightly so, this idea that in John Woo's cinema, in Lost Hurrah for Chivalry being a great example of this, in John Woo's cinema we always see this heightened reality, almost a super-realized sense, something that is extraordinary, something where people seem to be performing feats of what might be magic, or feats of superhuman capability on the one hand. And this is, I think, showed through the way in which emotions are heightened and really intensified. And that intensification is also carried through in many aspects of the fight choreography as well. Fight choreography is martial arts choreography is credited to Feng Hak-on, who also appears in the film as well. So this is very much a very key part of the sort of philosophy of the film, as embodied, for example, in the fight sequences. However, that's not the end of the story, because we also have fight sequences and also a display of human emotion that is really centered on the human experience. And so on the one hand, we have heightened, super realized senses and expressions of say, operatically realized cinema. At the same time, we always keep focus on the human and the intimate and the personal. And to take an example with the fight sequences, I say that they are very extended and wonderfully choreographed, and oftentimes very long, and they're very involved. And so what is so great about that is we get a sense of the fantasy element on the one hand, but also we get a sense of the real and the rugged and almost the street brawl aspect of their fights. When people get injured, you really feel the injury, or when there is there are oftentimes moments of very intense and very painful feeling sorts of violence as well, and that comes through in the very intense fight scenes. And so this becomes a really great mixture of the quote-unquote real and the quote-unquote fantasy, the idea of the truly intimate and emotional and personal and painful on the one hand, but also the superhuman and also the mythic and the mythological, that is combined in a really fascinating way in this film, Last Hurrah for Chivalry. And I dare say, too, that in going through maybe a journey of the works of John Woo, one can say that kind of cinematic sensibility is carried through in a lot of John Woo's works going forward. And it's very much evident, one can say, in this great work, which is Last Hurrah for Chivalry. And in that context, too, I want to say that there is this focus on the human and the human emotional context and the relationships. The fight sequences are very important, yes, and they are one of the fundamental components that makes for the great success that is Last Hurrah for Chivalry. Going hand in hand with that, too, are the relationships. The relationships between the characters are very, very fundamental. John Woo uses his cinema, his style, his camera work, and rack focus, and very ultra stylized cinematography and camera work in order to preserve and protect and enhance the emotional human stories that are part of this. And so that's why we see very heightened moments of, say, betrayal, and the moments of honesty that occur between characters, friendship and loyalty that is expressed. This becomes very, very important, and they are shown Style is always used in a way to enhance these. Style is not shown for style's sake. Style is shown for the enhancement of these human stories. And these human story enhancements are shown either in the true drama between human beings that can be fight choreography, or the true drama of human beings that can be in the form of these intimate scenes of, say, friendship, loyalty, betrayal, trust, lack of trust, or ultimate confirmation of something really real and really foundational and really strong in terms of a human connection with another human being. So this becomes thus the soul and the heart and spirit of this great film, Last Hurrah for Chivalry, a type of focus on the wuxia in the context of the great wuxia genre, the idea of a sense of kinship, of friendship, of loyalty, and that loyalty becomes tested, that loyalty becomes threatened, and that loyalty might even come under question, and maybe by the end of the proceedings, one may or may not know where things stand at the end of the day. That being said, this is part of the charm and this is part of the appeal. This is part of the spirit of Last Hurrah for Chivalry. This notion of a film being about trying to be sure in an unsure world and having these two characters, primarily, again, Wai Pak and Damien Lau characters respectively, being, again, with their own agendas, with their own, say, mysteries about them. They may or may not be who they say they are. But if they are who they say they are, then there is a further foundational aspect of the trait of loyalty. And if they aren't who they say they are, then that leads to further complications down the road. Are they or aren't they? Again, you'll have to watch the film to find out. But that's, again, part of the entertainment value. That's part of the charm. And you're going to get a lot of great fights, choreography along the way. It's violent. It's sudden and abrupt, but it's also very extended, and it's very beautifully choreographed. And it's all serving the purpose of the furtherance of the story. So you're getting everything in one jam-packed, entertaining film indeed. This is a great entry into the Criterion collection, and it is this film, which is from John Woo, and it is Last Hurrah for Chivalry. The Criterion Collection has released this film on this Blu-ray, Last Hurrah for Chivalry, again at SPY number 1174, and it is purported to be based on a 2K digital restoration. Just a word about the restoration from the leaflet, which I have taken the liberty of removing prior to the start of this. Last Hurrah for Chivalry is presented in its original aspect ratio of 2.39 to 1. This digital restoration was created in 2K resolution on an Aeroscan film scanner from a 35mm original camera negative. The 5.1 surround soundtrack was provided by Fortune Star Media Limited. The Cantonese and English dub monaural soundtracks were archived and provided by collectors dedicated to the proper preservation and releasing of Hong Kong cinema. And so I should point out, too, that there are 4 audio soundtrack options here. So as it's mentioned, that there's the 5.1 surround Cantonese soundtrack. There's also the monaural Cantonese soundtrack. And then there are the 2 English dubs. There are the 2 soundtracks, which are the English dub soundtrack in 2 versions. And they are distinguished by the use of the theme music. One English dub has one version of the theme music, the opening theme music, and the other English dub has another non-sung version of the theme music. So, because part of the aspect of this is how a number of aspects of the myth and legend and the story is also told in a lot of ways in the songs that are part of this film. So in one version of the English dub you get the sung version, the other English dub soundtrack you don't. So it's the non-sung version. So that's the 4 soundtrack choices that you have at your disposal there. So what to say about this? So I will be very honest here, which is I don't have the strongest knowledge base when it comes to the release history of this film, Last Hurrah for Chivalry. So I don't own a number of previous releases of this, so I don't have a strong frame of reference. But I have seen this film, and I can say that when I saw this film last time I saw it versus when I see it now on the Criterion release. I feel I'm very comfortable with watching this on the Criterion release. I'm very happy, generally speaking, with how I saw this. I will say that of the four soundtracks, I would say that I am keen perhaps most on the Cantonese language monaural soundtrack. So that's the second of the four. So that's my own personal choice. I did listen to all the soundtracks, and while I'm very intrigued by the 5.1, there's something about the monaural, and just for me personally, my own subjective experience, it's the one that I prefer just a little bit more. So, but that's my own preference. Now, in terms of the presentation itself, well, actually, let me talk to you a little bit more about the overall, my overall assessment of this, because there are some I think, critical points that one should make, at least I feel, about this Criterion release of Last Hurrah for Chivalry. And I think that can come across a little bit later in my discussion. So let me hold off on some points of criticism that I have about this until I finish talking about the supplements. So let's turn to the supplements now. And the supplements are, well, you go to the supplements menu and you have 3 supplements. That's, again, only 3. In terms of the quantity of supplements. And what are they? The first is a audio interview, or a set of interviews with John Woo. I understand it's compiled together in this approximately 3-minute audio interview with John Woo by Robert K. Elder. And this is described as being recorded from March and April 2004. And again, it's 3 minutes, and it's given this. It's an audio interview, but visually, Criterion has provided this type of video essay collage type of thing, with a lot of interesting graphics, including maybe illustrated. What sort of almost like words that appear on the screen as you hear John Woo speak. So they almost serve as a type of illustrated subtitling of the audio interview that we have here with John Woo, again, circa 2004, totaling 3 minutes. So here John Woo speaks about the inspirations for Last Hurrah for Chivalry, the great work of Chan Che and Akira Kurosawa and others, and also the basis, Emperor Qin Shi Huang and the assassin Jin Ke, and how that formed also the interest in wuxia, and how this is therefore the basis and emphasis of the story that he wanted to tell, was almost in interesting ways going against the grain of what was popular in Hong Kong cinema at the time. Because what was popular was more like comedies or action comedies, where here he's trying to tell wuxia story in almost the classical Chang Che vein, which seems to fly in the face of contemporary, say, market needs, etc. And indeed, he does mention how the film wasn't that successful at the time. He refers to it as a disaster. But he was very happy to have done it, because it was the ability to tell what is described as a classical swordplay story, again, wuxia, heroic characters on display, and also the idea of friendship on display. I should point out, it's a great audio interview. I should point out one thing, though. It does go into spoilers. And so if you have not seen the film yet, please don't watch or don't listen to this interview. It's a great interview after you've seen the film. But as you hear the words of John Woo, you see what's going on. You actually see some moments of the film that are very, very much spoilerish. So that's my urging to you to please watch the film first, and then you can watch this great interview. It is 3 minutes, so it goes by very quickly, but it's great to hear from John Woo about how he felt about this and the inspiration. And, I didn't realize at the time, that Last Hurrah for Chivalry wasn't that big of a success, financial success at the box office, at the Hong Kong box office. So that's an interesting aspect in and of itself. But it also shows the type of artist that John Woo is, because he seems to want to tell stories that he wants to tell. And he was working under Golden Harvest, and there was a certain, I would assume, therefore, the certain latitude bestowed upon him to be able to do projects like this. So it's good for us at the end of the day because we're left with this great work, which is Last Hurrah for Chivalry. So, but there's that. So that's the first supplement. The second supplement is called Trademark Wu, and this is Grady Hendrix speaking kind of one-on-one. Talking about John Woo and talking about the importance and significance of this film, Last Hurrah for Chivalry, in the context of the John Woo filmography. This is from 2022. It's approximately 8 minutes. And so he does speak about what is oftentimes referred to as the Hong Kong New Wave. And there are a number of emerging voices, emerging talents, emerging filmmakers from the new wave of cinema of the same or similar generation of John Woo, some of whom maybe studied or went to film school or otherwise got a lot of inspiration from films outside of Hong Kong, so maybe from Europe or the United States. John Woo, he acknowledges a lot of inspiration from, say, the films from François Truffaut on the one hand, but he's also someone that is coming through workings and education and learning about film through the Hong Kong Hong Kong as a geographic location. So, and he talks a little bit about watching films in Hong Kong, but watching a lot of films. Again, I mentioned Truffaut. Sam Peckinpah also comes up, and also this leads to a discussion of Last Hurrah for Chivalry, Kurosawa. His John Woo's reverence for the films of Chang Che, and also Chang Che's works being very important because they seem to be focusing in on honor and friendship and loyalty immersed in a sense of action and intrigue. And so that becomes very much the flavor and feel and spirit and soul, if you will, of Last Hurrah for Chivalry. So this becomes his desire, John Woo's desire, to want to make what Grady Hendrix reminds us is Wu Xia Piang, or swordplay film, in the very operatic vein, and also focusing in on the heroic and friendship and loyalty aspects that he found from the works of Chang Che and others. And so this sets the stage, as John Woo mentioned in the audio interview from the earlier supplement. This sets the stage for something that seemingly is not going along with the grain of what's popular at the moment. Grady Hendrix here also mentions that, again, in this moment, late 70s, what was popular at the Hong Kong box office were comedies and action comedies, not these classical wuxia genre films. And so, but this was the film that John Woo made, and it is a great film. One of reasons of which is I love how Grady Hendrix regards and mentions Feng Hak-on as the action choreographer. And he's also in the film, as I mentioned. And Grady Hendrix mentions here, much better than I could ever hope to try to do so. I tried earlier to mention this point, but Grady Hendrix mentions in a much better and concise way the idea that, for example, the fight choreography, we have hyper-stylized aspects that are combined with a rugged street brawl type of realism. And that is combined in a really robust and engaging and interesting way. And they are extended and they're long and they're really, really long. It's great. And so, and they use things from the set or like aspect, like chairs, and sometimes there's even elements of comedy, and sometimes you see bits of, say, visual flair and cinematic tricks that are used to almost, it's like a silent film comedy in a way. So there's moments of heightened super reality on the one hand, but there's moments of real rugged and painful feeling. You feel the exhaustion, you feel the sweat, you feel the blood, you feel the cuts and all this. So that mixture, I think, is really fascinating and outstanding. And Grady Hendrix then takes the great next step of saying how this is also part and parcel of how John Woo's cinema will emerge in terms of the action violence of his very famous filmography, Last Hurrah for Chivalry being part of that famous filmography, but we see it in other films down the road, like A Better Tomorrow or The Killer, etc. And also, what Grady Hendrix says here is that he reminds us that John Woo's background was in dance, and so this allows for this idea of the use of characters and how they engage with each other in the midst of this really chaotic and really exciting, intense action sequences. So sometimes two characters are fighting on the same side, and they'll be stopping and together, and they'll be talking, and then they'll go back to fighting. So that type of fighting, talking, fighting, that type of wonderful interplay is, as Grady Hendrix suggests, maybe coming from an idea of martial arts mixed with the dance background of John Woo. And you see that also in other films of John Woo going forward. So. And also, what Grady Hendrix says here, really, really important. Everything he says is very important. But one of the points that I want to emphasize, which I thought was among his great points, was, according to him, he describes John Woo as, for John Woo, emotional content comes first, style comes second. And I find that to be very, very apropos, because what this is he's using elements of really visually arresting style, like rack focus, slow motion, but he's using it in a way to tell the story. He's using it in a way to enhance the characters' arcs. He's using it in a way to really show to us the true impact of what it is the characters are feeling and expressing and experiencing at the given moment. And I find that, therefore, to be the ultimate embodiment of a type of cinematic opera style, and in many ways, John Woo is among the greatest of this type of tradition, very much so. And I love Grady Hendrix's commentary here on how he describes John Woo's filmography in that. And Last Hurrah for Chivalry is a brilliant example of this, my friends. So, and also I should point out Grady Hendrix's jacket. The color, it's great. I love his suit. It's great. I want the same suit. I must find out if he has information about his tailor. So I'd love to figure that out, because that looks really, really cool. But in any event, that is the 8-minute discussion with Grady Hendrix about John Woo called Trademark Woo. Worth checking out. Please check it out if you can. And then the supplements round themselves out with a trailer. It's a great trailer. It does have a little bit of a spoilerish edge to it, so if you are wary of spoilers, maybe you can wait until after you've seen the film to watch the trailer. But it's very, I love this style of trailer. It's fantastic. So it's long. I think it's about 5 minutes. It's great. John Woo is the director, so it's wonderful. So, so that is the supplements discussion. Now, as you can see, the supplements seem to be very slight in terms of quantity. We have a 3-minute interview, and then we have the 8-minute Grady Hendrix discussion. Now, they're both great, don't get me wrong. There's so much to take from those discussions. They're really wonderful. But it does leave me wanting more. And when we think about a lot of the other non-Criterion releases of Last Hurrah for Chivalry that have been had over the past few years, I think we can say that maybe in the eyes of a lot of people, this Criterion release might seem, comparative to other non-Criterion releases of this might seem to be somewhat lacking. And so there is no commentary track, for example. There aren't any other discussions about John Woo, for example, or there aren't any maybe discussions about wuxia genre or anything like that, which would have been really great and helpful. I mean, a film like Last Hurrah for Chivalry, and even a film like, a release like this could have been a great opportunity, say, for providing some background into Golden Harvest, maybe a background into John Woo's filmography. I think Grady Hendrix does a really great job of providing that, but maybe a furtherance of the John Woo filmography, discussion points about that. That would have been really fascinating. Or maybe a discussion of wuxia as a furtherance of the quote-unquote academic discussion that could have been had with regard to a release like this from Criterion. Now, again, what we do get and the content of what we do get is great, but it would have been nice to have seen more added. And again, also the lack of a commentary track makes this also, I think, very much conspicuous when standing shoulder to shoulder against other non-Criterion releases of the same film. So while I have nothing against the way that it's presented in terms of the presentation, I think it looks and sounds great. It feels fine to me, and the availability of the soundtracks for me anyway is I'm very happy with that. Again, it would have been nice to have more supplements. So and therefore, I think for a lot of people, this release, Last Hurrah for Chivalry from Criterion, not a knock against the film. It's not a knock against what we have, but it would have been nice to have seen more added from this Criterion release. A commentary track like we see in other releases could have been great, but oh well. That might mean, therefore, that for people who have the option of going with other, say, other regioned Blu-ray releases and the like, you might want to go someplace other than Criterion. That's your choice, and that's perfectly fine. It's not my place to say you must go Criterion or go home. Of course, that's not the point at all. You must get what you need in terms of your own needs as a consumer. And perhaps for some, this might be enough, but again, please note that you're not going to get the complete catalog of everything that has been released and talked about this film, Last Hurrah for Chivalry. If you want to be more completist about it, you're going to have to get other releases as well, because this is a fine and I think stable release of this film, but it's not going to satiate the needs of people who want to be completist about John Woo and about this film. You're going to have to get other releases in order to do that. So just keep that in mind. But if you're okay with this type of release that is, again, giving you a very brief yet informative insight into how this figures into John Woo, as well as a brief yet informative words from John Woo himself about the inspiration for this and the film itself. If you are okay with that type of release, then I think this can be okay for you. And so that is my 2 cents about that. So I must say that I wish that Criterion's release could have lived up to the greatness of the film that a little bit more. Maybe that's a harsh way of putting it, but I really wish that there could have been more. Again, it does on paper look like there are other releases of this film that are, shall I say it, maybe to the eyes of many, superior to that of this Criterion release. And if you feel that way, I completely understand. So, but in any event, if you are still looking for a great film from John Woo that's action-packed, that's a great example of the wuxia entertainment from John Woo. It's also got the John Woo hints and nuances galore, and it's really great and entertaining. And if you're in the area for a Criterion release of a great film, then if you're in that frame of mind, my dear friends, then I can definitely recommend this Criterion release, which is Last Hurrah for Chivalry from Criterion. Before I conclude this discussion, I should point out that while I do have some points of criticism that I've just mentioned, I do want to say that, and also that point of criticism does extend to the insert, the leaflet type, which is a fold-out leaflet. And I'm not a fan of the fold-out. I wish this could have been a staple booklet. But I do want to end on a positive note, which is that the cover art design I think is really splendid. I love this artistic rendering, and that's carried through in a lot of the drawings that are included in the fold-out as well. So production credits. Art is credited to art director Sarah Habibi, Eric Skillman, and design Alphaville. So I love this. Very cool indeed. I like this kind of use of white and black and reds as well, and it has this storybook fable element to it, mythological tinge to it. I think it's really great indeed. And also this idea of impermanence of things, and also this idea of genre and action. There's a lot of also action with the swirl. I don't know, something about the swirl and the way that it's also the watercolor type effect it looks makes it for very dynamic viewing. And there's the cover art, so it has a sense of movement. So that's one thing. And then the essay, which is included, is a really great one. Another great one. Again, a lot of times when I feel like the supplements might be a little bit, in terms of quantity, somewhat underwhelming, the essay comes and saves the day. And so here we have another great essay that I feel like fills the void in many respects. That's very admirable, and also it touches upon a lot of things, the history of, well, first of all, the essay, Long Live Chivalric Brotherhood by Aaron Han Joon Magnan-Park. And it goes over a lot of detail, a lot of points about John Woo's career, his filmography, Golden Harvest, Hong Kong cinema, Hong Kong new wave cinema, and how John Woo figures into that, going into a discussion of the marketplace and a film like Last Hurrah for Chivalry, and also the film itself, and also therefore the long-lasting legacy of Last Hurrah for Chivalry. Again, in the context of John Woo's cinema, and also in the context of Hong Kong cinema, it's almost in many ways, almost in a sense, bridging creating a type of bridge between the great classicism entertainment of Chan Che, and also 1980s and 1990s Hong Kong cinema that, of course, John Woo is a very, very fundamental part of. So this is really a great essay, fantastic essay. So it helps to really bridge that gap of what we, well, as I say, if any shortcomings that I felt were there in terms of the quantity of supplements on the disc itself, I think are made up in a very admirable way with the inclusion of an essay like this. So please read this essay. Please watch the film first, and then after you've seen the film, you can read this great essay. Again, it's called Long Live Chivalric Brotherhood. Okay, my dear friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great, great, great movies, including Last Hurrah for Chivalry and other films by John Woo. Really worth checking out. So anyway, my dear friends, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day, and until the next video, stay strong, stay safe, and cheers. Thank you.